Everyone, I will call the meeting to order again. This is the Monday, July 16th Wenham Board of Selectmen meeting. We have just adjourned from an executive session to open session, and the subject of our open session is the subject of the agenda item that we're going to start with. So I think I have everyone's permission to
the TV doesn't
change the order of the agenda. Just to do one appointment. I think you guys might know which one it is. And then we'll go back to the beginning, and the first thing after that will be public input. Okay? I will...
Excuse me, you might want to check with Guy. We're not on the TV.
He did give me a nod.
Gave you a
so
nod,
we're not on the monitor, but we're on. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Hamilton Selectmen meeting is also
that's right.
tonight.
It's being recorded.
That's right.
We're
We
on a
switched
Monday.
from Tuesday to Monday.
Over us?
On Monday nights.
This is a regularly scheduled meeting.
So after a long process, and I think a thorough process, I will make the following motion. I move to appoint Stephen B. Kavanaugh as Fire Chief for a term beginning on July 16th, 2018, and ending July 30th, 2019, at an annual salary of $111,912.62 precisely, which includes compensation for his continued duty serving as the clockwinder and animal control officer for the town, and subject to such additional terms and conditions as are included in the memorandum of agreement between the Select Board and Mr. Kavanaugh.
Second.
Any discussion?
I would just like to say congratulations for a lineage that goes back 100 years, is that correct?
Yeah, a little more.
In your little...
Yeah.
Who's
Since chief.
Oh, since chief. All right. And yeah, thank you for being here for the town once again.
You're welcome.
So,
Congratulations as well. We have to vote, though.
Yes, we do, but I just wanted to give us a chance to say.
okay.
So, without further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So
Congratulations.
that will be unanimous. It is unanimous. It starts today, by the way, Stephen.
Thank you.
Started today. You got that?
Steve, we're gonna walk. Need you to go back.
Oh.
Come on, Jackie.
Are they picture taking you?
I think I'm really trying to avoid it. Yeah, get together with your guys and have a picture.
Want to come up and take a picture together?
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, this way I can like hide behind someone.
I guess they don't do those dignitaries. I'm fine without that.
All right, so you guys slide this way. There's too many pictures. You think we can slide?
Didn't have my shirt before.
It's okay. I don't think she's going to get all of you guys in the picture.
I can get all of you.
We don't have a blue shirt like you, so we shouldn't get it.
I know. I kind of.
You're in the front. You're in the sorority spot.
Where's my Wenham seal?
can't fit that one in anymore.
All right, everyone look at Lucy.
Yeah,
That's a good picture. Huh? That's a nice picture.
that'll be a good one for the annual,
Everyone look at me.
which is right on the top of Jack's
Okay.
mind, I'm sure.
Anybody else?
Try
Wanna
not to
come
shake
up here?
it too much.
Here. Let's see how long they. You're a little too tall.
This is torturous.
Oh, I got you.
I hate
Because
pictures.
I've already pressed the wrong thing.
As you
and
might
closed the,
have known.
Camera out by mistake.
Thank you all.
All right, thank you. And you guys, gentlemen, are all welcome to stay for the meeting, but no obligation, except for Stephen in his newly appointed position.
I gotta stay.
Good job.
Richie, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a lot better picture, just a bunch of firemen instead of us.
Yeah,
people,
we
you
always
know?
look funny in those pictures anyway. We're
We've done
dressed
enough pictures,
differently.
really.
I have no.
That's good. Long process.
Okay, so we're going to go back to the beginning of the agenda to an aspect that we always do at the beginning, and that is public input for items that are not on the agenda. And I believe, sir, if you'd come up to the podium and introduce yourself, that'd be fine. So maybe someone wants to close the door.
Hello, my name is Robert Collins, and I'm here representing the locked-out workers of National Grid. We cover your town and 17 other towns doing gas work, and we'd like you to consider putting a moratorium on any new construction work that the town would have. The grid would ask for permits for cutting the road and installing new gas lines, new gas mains, and the people that are replacing us, we feel are far less experienced. They don't have as fine a training that the National Grid puts us through. We do annual training, schoolwork, state testing, and we think that that they won't work as safely and do the town justice of keeping it clean and safe road travel while they're working, and that they won't clean and do as nice a job to put things back together. Also, we do have union employees that would monitor their work and inspect their work as they were doing it to make sure that they're putting the pipe in under National Grid standards. And so essentially, you know, we're just concerned that it wouldn't be safely done. I've been with the company for 14 years, and early on, probably about 10, 12 years ago, in Hamilton, there was an issue on Margaret Circle where contractor crews had put in gas lines, and some of the connections were not done properly, and over a number of years, that started to continue to be a leak issue, and we had to shut that whole neighborhood down and fix all those mistakes. So we just feel very confident in our work, and we want to get back out there doing it, and want you to consider that any grid work for gas lines, that you would hold off until we are back and working.
Okay, thank you for your
Question.
input.
Sure.
You're with National Grid,
Yes, sir.
gas specific, because they do
Correct.
both electric.
Yes, sir.
We had an issue a few months back, right here on
Cherry Street?
Any comment? That was pretty outrageous to take 2 hours to get here,
Yeah.
and just to get here, and then 40 feet of gas fire. Could have happened to any one of us. And I understood, and I could be corrected, that there had been reporting of gas smells in that area to your company.
Yeah.
Where's the sense of responsibility here?
I believe, from what I understand, there is a leaking valve where Monument and Cherry Street join, and I was part of that project of replacing that leaking valve. That was probably a month after the leak, possibly 8 weeks at the most. From what I understand, I wasn't on that job, that there was a lightning strike and that the gas line in the ground was compromised by an electrical volt going into the ground, and that caused it to break open. At major intersections of streets, we have gas valves, and that's a potential problem for any paving work that you may have planned in the future. If gas valves are not, we have inspectors that go out there to find, ahead of the paving, to clear and raise any gas valves that would need to be raised, or possibly remove temporarily if they're grinding the street, to keep the boxes from being blown apart, and then we would come back and install them once that grinding was done. I believe one of the valves had been paved over a number of years ago, and it just wasn't known by anyone. So I think that the knowledge of where things were was not very clear. So they ended up shutting down a larger portion of the community than they would have liked to, because one of the
Well, I
areas.
guess my concern is I deal with a large industrial property in Beverly.
Yeah.
And I've had numerous issues with the gas company not responding to the smells of gas.
Yeah.
And I understood that this had been reported. Am I wrong?
No, you're
Okay.
correct.
Had been reported more than once,
Okay.
and apparently either the company didn't do anything about it, or didn't locate it, or didn't follow up in some way, shape, or form. I do have a very serious concern with something of that nature, because somebody could die real quick.
Yeah. I don't have an answer to that, but I can try to find some answers.
I would appreciate it
Because
if you would, yes.
in
And
this
if
area-
you had a card before you left, or
I don't, but
leave your name and number or something.
sure.
Just so,
He was not a member of management, so I never
Yeah.
know that,
no, but he could put us on to.
But I can get somebody from the committee that would,
I would appreciate it. They can get a hold of Peter, or
Sure.
any one of us.
yep, that'd be fine.
Do you have anything to relay in terms of the status of the negotiations that are ongoing?
Unfortunately, no. They're going to be meeting tomorrow, and hopefully there'll be some progress. There's been a cooling off period, and I think, unfortunately, the company has been planning on this for a while. They started off the year by slowing down work and overtime, I think to try to keep people, a little bit hungry, the workers, so they would get their minimum pay. And so I think it's just going to be a challenge, and hopefully both sides can come to a mutual agreement that can work for everybody.
well, good luck.
So,
Wish you good
Yeah.
luck.
Yeah.
Thank you for your
Thank you,
input.
sir.
We'll-
Nobody wins with this, so, yes.
We will discuss your
And by the way,
your
my comment
suggestion.
was not meant to be derogatory in
Discuss
a negative
at another
sense,
meeting.
but
yeah,
We'll
to
decide
be-
whether we want to
because I
discuss this
fully believe in
issue.
training. I mean, our fire
Check with other
department,
towns, see what they're
police,
doing.
Oh, yeah,
electrical
plus-
inspectors, they must be trained, and safety is a number
I don't
one
know what it means
priority.
to put a
Yes.
moratorium.
It's me at work,
Lot of questions.
or here at the town level.
yeah,
So that's my concern. So I would
It'd be a long
appreciate it if
conversation.
someone could get back to us.
sure.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Thank you very
Thank you
much
very
for
much.
coming
Good
by.
luck.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
I was going to suggest that we move on to announcements, but we're literally 1 minute away from a public hearing that has a time certain, or 2 minutes, Apple time. So we'll take a short, very short 2-minute recess and then open up a public hearing. There's a few fits and starts on this. Talk among yourselves, as Jack would say.
Most strikes, I usually hear about the management side and the labor side. I haven't seen it. Other than lockout, that's all I know.
Yeah, National Grid provides updates through David Gendel, and his office has been sending out fairly regular updates. Yeah.
But I don't know what the management side is versus the labor side. I don't,
No, then we
Are
didn't
they
hear
asking
that
for
tonight.
50% raises and we're offering 2? It usually comes down to money, doesn't it? Money and benefits?
Presume. I don't.
I don't know any strike that doesn't, but,
Yeah.
Yeah.
so what's the public
Okay,
hearing?
so it's the personnel policies. So I'm going to start reading this motion, and I think by the time I'm done reading, it will be 6:45.
Steve, we're back in session now.
Yeah, so if everyone, we're going to move on to our public hearing, and I will make the motion. I move that the Board of Selectmen open the public hearing for the purpose of considering public input on proposed personnel policy changes related to a comprehensive employee handbook update. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so the hearing is open. It will be open for, what did we say, 15 minutes, I guess, till 7 PM. Although, it doesn't really have to be now. So we'll just, is there anyone from the public who is here who would like to comment on the proposed changes that would, to our personnel handbook, which most
The
people.
line would form right here,
Would
by
not
the way.
have-
We're an orderly line.
Right. I guess, since we're past our time, hearing none, we can move on. Are we
Close
okay
the
with that?
hearing,
So we
I
will
think so.
make another motion to,
Before you do, I think
Yeah, I move
might
the
just-
Board of Selectmen close the public hearing. Is there a second?
So, second.
You
All in-
have some other comment?
Any other discussion?
I just would call out the fact that the reason why there's a public hearing is because it's required in the town bylaws.
And
In Chapter 2 of the town bylaws,
In other words, making.
any
changes.
personnel policies have to require a public hearing and advertisement in the local paper prior to the public hearing. It had been continued from previous meetings, but this is the first time we will be having substantive discussion about these proposed changes.
And I should actually have read this public hearing notice that was in the Salem News before the projected date of the first one. So I guess I'll quickly do that. The Board of Selectmen of the Town of Wenham, because Catherine will be mad if I don't, Massachusetts will hold a public hearing regarding updates to the employee handbook. The public hearing, and this was the original before it had been continued, will be held on Tuesday, June 19th at 6:30 p.m. at Town Hall, 138 Main Street, Wenham, Massachusetts. Supporting information may be viewed at the Town Administrator's Office between the hours of 9 a.m. and 4:30 p.m. on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, 9 a.m. and 7 p.m. on Tuesdays, and 9 a.m. and 1 p.m. on Fridays. Inquiries or questions may be directed to the Town Administrator's Office by calling 978-468-5520, extension 2. The public is encouraged to attend and participate. And again, this notice was in the Salem News. It was duly advertised on June 11th, and we have publicly continued to tonight. So, but we have not yet voted to close the hearing. So, if there's no other comments or discussion, all in favor of closing the hearing?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, and it is closed at 6:47.
Did we lose Catherine?
Yes, Catherine had to go to another meeting, but we are being recorded, not played live, but recorded, so that she
She'll catch
can
it
do the
afterwards.
minutes from
Okay.
the meeting.
What other meetings you have to go to?
It's an obligation in another town that she has, that usually wouldn't conflict,
I
but
see, okay.
Don't
You know-
normally meet on the
we're not usually,
Monday.
on the fourth Monday, yeah, off week and off
Okey dokey.
time.
Week and off day.
Okay. So, moving along.
And so
Now-
where's the path lead now, Catherine?
Now, I've been looking at my check
make
marks.
sure I
I think
stay
now
with you.
we're on announcements. And the first one is with Jack.
Yes, art grows here. Anybody knows what that means?
If you don't,
I
you
don't
will
think
in a
so.
minute.
It's our 375th anniversary installation. Stop by Town Hall through July 22nd to see the Art Grows Here installation by 375 Anniversary Committee, which is right outside to my right, featuring entries from their visual art contest held this spring and a 375th sign made by Wenham resident Paul Mendoza. Art Grows Here is an annual 10-day map-guided tour of outdoor art throughout Hamilton and Wenham. And Trudy, you want to get up and embellish upon that?
Do you have anything else to add,
I'm done.
Okay.
She just wanted to be.
That's all it was right here. I read it all.
That paragraph off my papers. Hi, Trudy Reed, Chair of the Wenham 275th Anniversary Committee. I just wanted to come here and update you on what we have been up to and what we can expect over the next few months. So a few of the committee members were just at Wenham Museum Military Day this past weekend, passing out flyers and selling some merchandise. And speaking of merchandise, we're having a sale. It started last week and it goes through until the 18th, Saturday. So it's 3 items for 7 days, $5 off. Get it? 375?
Oh, I didn't get it. Now I do. Great, that's very
That
clever.
was,
Very
I think
clever.
that came from our intern and Jackie possibly.
does it?
And if anyone's interested in that, they're going to be at
It's
this.
good, though.
When in doubt.
You might want to take credit. That's a good one.
We're not the
That's a good
brightest
one.
bulbs in the box, but we tried.
It took me a second, too. And some of the committee's going to be at the Council on Aging Ice Cream Social this Wednesday from 1 to 3, selling the merchandise. And if you don't make it there, it's always for sale in Town Clerk's office.
Great.
And these funds that we're using from the merchandise is going to offset our costs for September 8th Parade and the Community Day. So, as you know, Jack talked about Art Grows Here, and I wasn't quite listening, and I apologize, but the exhibit
I can do it
is...
He's used to it.
The exhibit is from the entries that were submitted for Happy Birthday Wenham art contest that we ran as a committee. We're going to have a booth at the Wenham Museum Summer Fair on Saturday, August 25th, again, selling our merchandise, as well as a new item that we're currently working on. So yes,
Oh, there
that
you
will be
go.
revealed shortly, but we've got a new item coming.
It's like Prime Days.
Diane Bucher and her
Well
and the
said.
parade committee have been hard at work lining up the parade participants, state elected dignitaries to attend, as well as lining up community people, businesses to attend the Community Day, which will be held after the parade in Pingree Park. The park will have children's games, food trucks, demonstrations to please every age group. As you may know, the Community House had to cancel their annual block party a few weeks ago due to rain and has not been able to reschedule despite their best efforts. So they are partnering with us, and they're going to bring lots of their block party fun and flair to our special event. So we are looking forward to teaming with the Community House to have some of their events that they would have normally
And the
offered.
fireworks?
I haven't heard anything about fireworks. Have you heard anything about
Fireworks is
fireworks? Okay, we haven't
gonna
heard anything
happen
about
this year.
fireworks.
Okay, never mind. But that's great. That's because I'm.
Can we go to your backyard?
Yeah,
You get
absolutely.
the right people in the room to ask the question.
Yeah. Well, I know that they normally do, so I didn't.
I think
But-
we're just taking the kids'
Yeah, which is great,
activities and
'cause they
things like
have a lot
that.
of
Yeah,
that
so we're going to have lots of activities for kids and of all
It's
ages.
a beautiful time of the year, too.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the committee has been busy notifying the homes and businesses along the parade route of the event, so they are aware of what is happening on September 8th, as well as encourage them to put out chairs and get involved in some aspects. And I'd also like to invite all the residents to be involved by participating in the parade or the community day. We'd love to see floats and marching bands. We also invite local businesses and organizations to be visible at the community day. Local musicians, dancers, entertainers are invited to join us. So if you have a group, anything that you want to put in the community day, please contact us. All that you need to do is go to the town's website, look for the link on 375, and there will, on the 375 tab, there's a link to the parade registration. And you can always email us or call Diane or Jackie or myself or whoever answers the phone.
Can you remind everyone of the parade route?
No, I can't.
Okay. Sorry.
I think it starts at Bucher, and it's going to come up Porter, and somewhere we're going to circle around the town hall, and then we're going to go down 1A to the park.
Got it.
I
think you're right. That sounds familiar.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
just-
Porter to Arbor.
Porter to Arbor, that's the street I was
Yeah.
missing, Arbor, yeah,
Be
yeah.
Already on the mailing that's going out this week.
Oh, yeah, we've been working on a mailing similar to what the town did to remind everybody of the second night of town meeting. So we've worked on a mailing, and that should be going out this week. And we've been busy, and we're going to keep busy, and we're going to just do what we can to make this a grand event, a grand finale on September 8th to what we've been doing all year.
Great.
Great.
Thank you very
Wonderful.
much.
If anybody does not want to participate in the parade or having a booth at Community Day, but you want to help out, call us. We are going to be looking for volunteers to help us organize that whole day, getting people in place along the parade route, setting up tents, chairs, tables, all that other good stuff. So
Talk to the Scoutmaster.
the scouts are on our list. Yep.
Yeah, they're on everybody's list when it
Yeah,
comes to.
yeah. I'm
labor, it
sure
seems
by
like.
September 8th, people are going to be tired of hearing from us, but we just keep going and.
Keep going.
And
Thank you. We don't
yeah.
turn 375 often, you know?
No,
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 no.
no. The state police mounted unit was at Military Day, and
Saw that in the
I know,
front page of the
and
paper.
I'm like, ooh,
That would be
let's
cool.
get them.
In the
So we're
parade,
working on
that
them
would
as
be very
well as an
Good.
antique car from state police. We're hoping that they were going to join us. So we've got all kinds of good stuff lined up.
Great.
Yeah.
Sounds exciting.
Okay,
It'll be here before we know it,
I guess we'll
unfortunately.
have Enon 1 back here.
I think that's
We're expecting to.
That's the plan. That's
the
be great,
plan.
Nice.
yeah.
Lots of fun
Yeah.
things.
So good things, and
Nice.
we're going to
Great.
have
Going,
a
Trudy.
great day.
Thank you
Great.
so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Trudy.
Okay, our next, and Trudy mentioned this, our next announcement has to do with the Council on Aging Ice Cream Social, and I have a flyer that says, which is very pretty. I don't know if the camera can pick this up, but it's a very pretty flyer. And it says, Ice Cream Social, Wednesday, July 18th, complimentary ice cream sundaes. Complimentary ice cream sundaes. Enjoy with your grandchildren, 1 to 3 p.m., sponsored by the Friends of the Wenham Council on Aging, 10 School Street, Wenham. It really is a very festive event. I've been there before. We have run out of ice cream a couple of times, there have been so many people, but it's a really nice event. So 1 to 3, I think even adults, doesn't have to be just children, are welcome to go and have some ice
It
cream.
is good,
at the
it's very
council.
nice.
It's a
I've
fun event.
volunteered a number of
Yeah.
times to help serve and all that.
Right.
So-
Also serve frozen yogurt, you thinking just ice cream?
I think it's ice
Just
cream.
ice cream Sundays.
Sundays, yeah.
I learned fish wasn't very
Sorry,
good,
I'm
so
gonna,
maybe ice cream-
I'm going to miss it this year, but my grandchildren will be there.
It doesn't have mercury
Okay, so
in it.
our third announcement, our last announcement, has to do with Wenham Day, and John, you
Yes,
have that one.
we have Wenham Day coming up, our annual. Does anybody know how many years this has been going on? Because the question that crossed my mind when I
feel
read about
the
this.
craft fair part of it, I feel like since I've been here, so 30 years.
Okay, so yeah, that's what I'm thinking, but it might have been
These
before
guys have
me.
been here longer. Some-
Anyway, Wenham Day, which is a family festival and a summer fair. It's going to be held right here on the town hall property and the museum and so forth. It's being sponsored by the museum. And it's Saturday, August 25th, from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. A rain date of Sunday, the 26th, which is the next day. It is free admission to the fair. They have some of the best handcraft vendors I've seen anywhere. There's going to be over 60 vendors and artisans. There's going to be lawn games, children activities, face painting, petting zoo, the Music Man, live music activities, face painting, live music from Time and Again singers, decades of his free tours of the historic Calvin Garish Richards house. I'm not sure where that is.
That's the historic house right here.
Oh, is that
free
what it's
tours.
called? I call it the museum.
You
Okay.
mangled it, John, but it's right there.
I did. Would you like to finish? The fire department will have an open house with all the fire folks there. There'll be food trucks of all sorts, a craft beer distributor. It's just a great time, so please come and join us.
It's a fantastic time. One of the things that kids likes is when they have the foam.
That's right.
That's fantastic. The
It's
kids
always-
jump in it, and that.
Feeler at the-
And the only other thing to augment it, when John said, is that I would encourage you to walk here, but if you're going to drive, you better park a long way away.
Maybe as far as
Because the
you'd have
streets
to
are-
walk.
Pardon me?
Maybe as far as you'd have to walk. If
Maybe
lived
as
in
far as you
Wenham.
have to walk. And those, and that's early in the morning, down Cherry and Monument Street, those parking spaces are, so if you're anywhere in the neighborhood and you can walk, you'd be better off walking than driving. I didn't mean to take away.
Yeah,
Well,
no,
and I
that's
just-
fine.
I'm gonna-
Also, another suggestion for parking is just over at Bucher, and then just walk over from there.
That's another one, yeah.
I
Yeah.
just thought of that now, because there's always somebody asking me, well, where do I park? Where do I park?
And Peter, I know there's a town hall component of this that we really haven't elaborated on. Would you like to?
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in.
Put in
Thank
a
you for
plug
doing
there.
that.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Town Hall will be open as well. Last year was the first time we did an open house, and there'll be different employees from different departments and some representatives from various boards and committees here to answer questions and give some information to residents who are interested, so.
And balloons.
And
We have the monopoly on balloons.
Yeah,
yes,
I knew that. That's why I
that
felt
was the
confident
sell.
saying that.
That was the sell last
Balloons.
year.
We had, I think, 200 to 250 people in town hall alone.
We
last
love
year,
that.
so Which was great.
Open the doors, come on in.
Just in
see
town
what
hall?
we're- See what we're like.
Wow.
It was great.
And Town Hall was very popular for the use of the restrooms last year.
That might have been the
And
draw.
there's that.
Balloons.
Driving
Yeah.
force, balloons.
Air conditioning and restrooms.
Yeah, 200 of those 250 people looking for the restrooms.
Well, as long as they came in, it's great.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so we move along on our agenda. The next thing that we have is the town administrator's report.
Okay, a couple quick updates in terms of personnel. The finance director, treasurer, collector position was posted last month. We extended the deadline to last week and now have several candidates that we'll be bringing in for initial interviews in the next, hopefully, week or two. We're still trying to nail down dates for those just based on everybody's summer schedules and availability and such. But I would expect that we're going to have a group of recommended finalists for the board to interview at a meeting in August. The hope is to do it, your meeting on the 7th, at the latest it would be on the 21st. So that process is ongoing, and I think we have several promising candidates based on their submissions, which is good news. In the meantime, we did hire out a consultant who started last Friday, transitioning with Leslie, our current finance director, to ensure that the treasurer collector portion of that job function is fulfilled as we go through the transition period. Shifting gears a little bit, but still on the personnel front, as you will recall, we posted the electrical inspector, plumbing and gas inspector, and initially building commissioner positions for our new shared program with Hamilton. Those were posted in June. We have been conducting interviews with candidates for the electrical inspector and plumbing and gas inspector positions over the past few weeks. We have had representatives from Hamilton involved in that process because they're partners with us.
So there will be a Hamilton representative, even though they don't have a full-time town manager?
Yeah, so they're probably not going to get the title exactly right, but their planning director, community development director, Patrick Griffith, has been sitting in on those interviews and participating in those. And then for the building inspector position, the acting town manager also will be involved in addition to Patrick, just so that, we wanted to make sure that coming in the door, it was an equal partnership on paper in the IMA. Wenham is the lead community, but we wanted to have them participate in the process so they felt comfortable. Also, ultimately, all of the inspector positions will be appointed by both the Wenham Board of Selectmen and the Hamilton Board of Selectmen. So we thought it was important to have Hamilton folks involved for that reason as well. So we did make, we ended up reposting the building position. We made some minor modifications to that posting when we put it back out. We think it still is going to align with what we're looking for in terms of filling the needs of that position, but we did repost it. The new posting actually expires today. So
When you say building, you meant building inspector?
Building inspector.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah, it was originally, the title when we first posted it was building commissioner. It's now going to be inspector of buildings. But we feel like after some internal conversation, we feel like it's really as envisioned in the job description. It's not a department head level position, and the pay range isn't really matching that of a commissioner per se on paper. So that's why we made that change in the hopes of getting some more qualified candidates. So in terms of process and timing, we are hoping as soon as we have conducted some initial interviews with the building inspector candidates to give some recommendations to both boards to fill those various positions. So that will be coming in the next meeting or two, just depending on the timing of the applicable for the building inspector position. And in the meantime, we're in a holding pattern in terms of the current employees in both towns are
So everybody's
continuing
just
to
stable?
fulfill their roles, and yeah.
Okay.
Any
That's it.
questions for Peter? Nope. Okay. We have concluded our public hearing, started and finished our public hearing, which would have been next on the agenda, and done one item of new business. So we'll move to item B in new business, which are a few appointments, which
Oh,
John
my.
has.
Yes, we have appointments, and Chief, if you thought you were done, you're not.
Yeah, well, that. it's
We've
like
got more to
halfway.
give you, along with a few others, folks. All right, the appointments this evening will be for Forest Warden, Historic District Commission, and Veterans Committee. So, each of these candidates have submitted a letter of interest. Right, Chief?
No,
For,
goes with it.
not for Forest Warden.
Yeah, no,
It's
he
part and
does-
parcel.
It's part,
Okay.
yeah.
For the other two positions.
He has
for
no
the-
choice
for
on
the-
that one.
Yeah, for the boards and
Okay.
committees.
All right, so the first motion, I move to appoint Stephen B. Kavanaugh as fire warden for a one-year term beginning July 16th, 2018, and ending June 30, 2019.
I think it's forest warden,
Forest
John.
warden, right.
Forest.
I think you said fire, but
Oh.
it's forest warden, again, because we're
Fire
being...
chief, forest warden.
We're being, well, I think we
Okay.
might have a different...
Correct me if I'm...
Okay. Is there a second?
Second,
Any discussion?
yes. Chief, what does the forest warden do?
That's a good question.
Forest warden,
In 30 seconds or less, of course.
for outside burning and stuff, I can shut the burning down if I choose to. Like, I can overrule the state and say, I don't want the town of Wenham to burn today.
Isn't there only a certain prescribed times of the year, like in the spring, where you're allowed to burn outside?
Yep, January 15th to May 1st.
But during that period of time, you have to give a permit as well, right?
Yes.
But if you think that the conditions aren't right, you can say, no mas.
Yep.
Is that the idea?
I mean, they could have heavy rain out in the western part of the state, and we could still be dry, so I could shut it down.
Yeah. But that's the extent of the discretionary duties of the forest warden?
Yeah, and you can also lead a task team going out if there was a major brush fire somewhere.
Okay.
You could be a team leader.
But that would be the fire chief as well. That's you,
Yes.
of course.
Yeah, but they single it out as forest fires. And
Okay. Good. Thank you.
Other questions?
I'll ask it again next year, I'm sure. But
Okay. If there's no further discussion, all in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Aye, that's unanimous.
Thank you, chief.
Thank you, chief.
Thank you.
That's one. All right. I move to appoint Dana P. Bagnell, Don
O'Bannon.
Bannon. I made a note.
I want to know what these middle names are.
And Barbara K. Locke to the Historic District Commission, each for a got to put that word in there, it was missing, for a 3-year term beginning July 16th, 2018, and ending June 30, 2021.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? If none,
All good folks, and thank you very much.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous.
All right, last, but I'm sure not least, I move to appoint William J. Wilson III to the Veterans Committee for a 1-year term beginning July 16th, 2018, and ending June 30, 2019.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Yes, I just wanted to comment. I'm a member of the Veterans Committee, and Mr. Wilson has attended several of our monthly meetings, and he's a wealth of information on our veterans and that where they're buried and what we do, and that he's done a lot of research on his own time, and that we're just extremely pleased that he was willing to serve in the committee, and I was a member of the committee, so that I couldn't be more enthusiastic about his appointment.
Great. Thank you, Jack.
Okay, I guess we're ready to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous for Bill Wilson. Thank you to everyone who's just been appointed.
I'm all set, Catherine.
Okay, the next thing that we have on our agenda is an overview of a Habitat for Humanity project on Hull Street. We've invited our Affordable Housing Trust Chair, Josh Anderson, to be here. Thank you, Josh. And while he's getting to the podium, I will just make one editorial comment, and that is we've had a sort of fortuitous, coincidental situation.
Say that again. That was good.
Fortuitous, coincidental situation in which
Thought I was bad.
it was synchronous or serendipitous, whatever it is, it really was. As we were working on the Affordable Housing Trust Plan, which we've just seen, were approached as a trust by a gentleman from the Habitat for Humanity, who had a project. And I will just, that's all the introduction, I'll give it.
Oh, good, because you almost stole my whole speech.
No, I was trying not to. I'm a process-oriented person, as you might know. I just want people to know we're just sort of, this is just like, here it is, and the trust has some.
So if you may remember in the presentation, first of all, Josh Anderson, Chair of the Affordable Housing Trust, good evening.
Thank you for
Good evening.
We were very pleased to have, during the course of our working through the action plan, a visit from Don Preston from Habitat Humanity with a project that he was looking to get some funding on, which I'll describe in a minute. The he's here too if we have any questions for him as we get a little bit further. And I'm not going to take all night, I promise, Jack.
Because he might come back again sometime.
I know.
and
I have a
doesn't
comment
want
on
to wear out his welcome.
So, but we didn't want to address it when we were presenting the action plan because that night was about the action plan, not about a project. Now, we're not asking you to approve a project tonight either because we haven't formally recommended the project because we didn't have the action plan done yet. But this project comports very nicely with a major area of our action plan, which is to reuse derelict houses in Wenham when possible to create affordable housing. So we couldn't have been happier and more thrilled, and it was all we could do to keep quiet about it last time when we were presenting the action plan. So there is a condemned house at 40 Hull Street that Habitat for Humanity has under agreement to purchase the site, and he plans on going through a comprehensive permit, so a friendly 40B comprehensive permit in order to be able to put 2 units in the house, a 1-bedroom and a 2-bedroom, because we're short on those sized units, and it's more units, which was something that the trust had thought was a good idea.
Will that have to go before the ZBA?
ZBA, yes. So Don has done this a couple other times. He's done it in Hamilton. He's done it, well, I can let him present, but he impressed me with his experience and understanding of the processes needed to get through and do this. And so it's an 18,000-foot lot, and there would be, as I say, a 1-bedroom and a 2-bedroom duplex house. That's why the comprehensive permit needs to get done, because our zoning doesn't cover a 2-family house. As I say, we're not asking for approval for a presentation tonight, but I can give you the parameters that we think we're going to get. We think we're going to be asked for $230,000, so $115,000 per unit, and it would be in the form of a loan. It'll be a deeply subordinated loan that would be called in the event it doesn't, the units become unaffordable for some reason. So, you know, in theory, we've protected the town's capital. We haven't made a grant, we've made a loan, so we still have a piece of the, you know, we have an interest in the property.
Yes.
Even though it's a deeply subordinate. So if some reason the property all of a sudden becomes worth a cajillion dollars and Habitat says, well, we have to sell this, well, we get our money back with interest. So otherwise it would ensure, that loan would ensure that it stays affordable forever. I won't steal Don's thunder about talking about the Habitat for Humanity program. I'll just say that I was very impressed with the program they go through in terms of selecting owners for the houses, how they subsidize it, how they provide, they remain part of the it's going to be a condominium because it'll be 2 owned homes. They remain part of the condominium association during the entire ownership of the property. When the owners sell, they get some appreciation, but it's restricted based on making sure that they stay affordable. And we wanted to make sure we came and introduced this to you because we think it's very likely that at our meeting on Wednesday, we're going to make a recommendation to you to approve this. And there is a little bit of a time fuse on this, which is, you know, one of the good things about the trust is we need just Board of Selectmen approval. We don't need to go to town meeting, which is, we can fulfill our mandate that way. So we understand that the Board of Selectmen is reticent to approve something the first time they've ever heard about it. So we wanted to make sure you'd heard about it. And so that's why I'm here tonight to tell you about it. I think I'll stop there and see if you have any questions.
I think it's a terrific idea. I applaud you.
Great.
Yeah. And I personally have worked with Habitat many years ago on 2 projects over in Ipswich, and I was quite impressed. I mean, the unskilled labor that they bring in sometimes is a little bit challenging because my background is construction. But the heart and the head are in the right place,
right.
And if you can make it affordable, and we can add that to our affordable housing stock, everybody's a winner.
One thing I'll tell you about that is the volunteer construction help includes by requirement, the buyers of the units, they have to put in,
Oh, that's right.
they have to
yeah,
put in a
yeah.
whole bunch of hours in order to be able to qualify for ownership there. So they're very well vested by the time they get their homes.
And I went looking for this building over the weekend.
40 Hull Street.
Yeah, I didn't have the number, I couldn't remember the number, so I was wandering up and down, but I think I know where it is, so.
Yeah.
It's great, it's a nice area.
There is an elevation in our books. And
See.
just
Well,
a couple
The
pages.
elevations of new construction, I think, because I think it's a tear down.
Yes, yes, that's a good
right,
point.
It's a demo, yeah.
Right. So it's a nice, pretty picture, but I don't think it'll help
No,
find it.
no, I wasn't connected, I was just
Yeah, I
saying.
got it.
Is the fire department going to be able to practice on it?
You don't want to do that again? So my understanding is that the fire department and law enforcement know about this house, so it's going to be a really good thing to replace.
Okay,
So
We'll leave
great,
it at
thank
that.
you.
And we'll leave it at that.
I thought that was,
So
They
the,
don't want to train on it.
yeah, they don't want to train, yeah. So as Josh said, the trust is meeting this week, and it won't be our first discussion on this project, but,
it'll be our first with the action plan
Right.
in place, and it fulfills one of the,
Well, that was a quick turnaround.
well, it was, it was like we said, it was
Like I said,
serendipity that this
serendipity
came
is
while we
what
were
it is.
coming along with the plan.
Ah, that's
Yeah.
great.
So,
It's great.
so at that point in time, I presume there'll be a little bit more in-depth presentation, and Don Preston is actually here this evening just to give support and answer any questions we might have, but I guess we'd be expecting more
I
from
think
Don.
we would have Don make a
next
presentation as part of a presentation
Right.
to approve the funding
Right.
at the next available Board of Selectmen meeting.
Yep, and
Sounds
we've
good.
already got it on a list to put on.
But we wanted to get
presuming
it on the
that-
radar screen.
Yeah.
Right.
It is.
All right?
Other questions? No, great. Josh, thank you so much for coming.
We're going to get to see you
I'll see you
quite repeatedly.
Wednesday.
I hope that'd be good.
Okay. Moving along, the next item is discussion of proposed updates to employee handbook. Is that right? Am I reading that right? Yes. Which is my item, but not really my item, because I'm going to punt that one right over to Peter. This is the reason we had the hearing. I will remind folks, so we have a very old employee handbook. I'm sorry, you may have been planning on saying this, but a very, like, I guess I don't remember the date, 2003?
2001.
Oh, a little older, 2001. I think Peter has spent the best part of at least a year to update this. Is that?
Yeah, it's been an ongoing, on and off again project for the past year. It's certainly been on all of our radars as a priority really shortly after I started. Because again, it hasn't been updated since 2001. There have been a number of personnel policies that have been approved by the Board of Selectmen since that time, but they haven't been formally incorporated into the handbook. So we've had a number of points of feedback to get to where we are today with the draft updated handbook. The first was by legal counsel, by labor counsel. They went through our old handbook and did some pretty thorough review and made a number of changes to the existing policies to comply with state and federal statutes and regulations that have been passed in the past 17 years. And they also made recommendations on some supplemental policies to add to the handbook, again, to bring us into compliance. And then the other element that is included in this initial draft is really looking at what's on paper versus what has been in practice for the past several years, what's in practice today, and making sure that those are aligned. So the original document that we had was in a PDF. That was all that we had. We didn't even have a Word document, so we had all sorts of fun with conversions back and forth. So there's no red line document if you're looking in the packet. There's essentially the updated version that's dated today, and then there's the original from back in 2001. But I'll just go through very quickly the changes, what substantively has been amended from the 2001 handbook to the current version. So Chapter 1, there was a history of Wenham component that wasn't necessarily applicable to the handbook. It was kind of a history of the town, interesting, but not necessarily germane to having in the employee handbook. There is an updated organizational chart that has been included in the GFOA budget document, so that was something that we that was referenced in the original handbook, but there wasn't a copy of an org chart in there, so we have that. Section 2, the equal employment opportunity policy has been updated and combined with a broader policy that also addresses discrimination and sexual harassment. That was actually, and then moved down to Chapter 3. And then the recruitment and selection process under Chapter 2, again, reflects our current processes for those things. Chapter 3, under personnel management, the drug and alcohol policy was removed at the recommendation of Labor Council. It's going to be a separate standalone personnel policy because it only is applicable to a select few handful of employees. The performance review, which is 3-3 now, section reflects our current practices as well, including the merit pay component that non-union employees are eligible for. Chapter 4, which is related to payroll, references the classification plan that we now have in place for non-union employees. I actually noticed that we need to add a reference to the library compensation and classification schedule as well to that. So that's just an amendment that I have to make. Chapter 5, employee benefits. The personal leave and personal absence, there were two separate policies that have been now combined, and there are other leaves that are covered by various other policies, FMLA, small necessities leave, the parental leave policy, and so forth. We did add a new parental leave policy, which is a statutory requirement. And sick leave, the one somewhat substantive change on the sick leave policy is that we added an element that would allow employees to use up to 5 days a year of their sick time for family sick. That's something that the board had discussed relative to other contracts, and so that was a recommendation coming out of that process. So I will say there are still some additional policies that that the board could consider to add to the employee handbook, but quite honestly, given the extent of the changes, I thought we'd eat the whale in small bites and do all the kind of legal requirements out of the gate and then go from there. So that's a high-level summary of what's new and different with this most recent iteration.
I'd like to say I'm very pleased to know that you've been working on this, because not unlike technology, personnel issues evolve fairly quickly, and to be 17, 18 years since it last reviewed, that is quite outrageous. And I guess I'm wondering, is there some way we can put a flag in our system where maybe these are reviewed on some sort of a calendar?
Yeah, I think they should
5
be
years,
reviewed on. I
something
think they
like
should be
that.
reviewed on an annual basis. I mean, there's.
Well, I wouldn't disagree with that.
There's the Fair Wage Act that's now come online. There's new OSHA regulations that'll be effective next February
Yeah.
that we have to comply with, so.
Discrimination stuff, I mean,
Correct.
it just goes on and on.
Yep.
How much that has changed, and just watch the news every day, read the papers, and you find out, oh my gosh, I had no idea somebody could get sued for that, or somebody, the company has to know about this.
But
So thank you.
Yeah,
That's what I'm
absolutely.
saying.
But I would agree that I think the good news is we'll be in a much better place. We'll be current once we're on the other side of this.
Right,
And
so
then
will you be able to put into place some sort of flagging? Okay, sure.
I would agree.
Thank you.
Anything, Jack? Do you have anything?
No.
Okay. I just have a couple things.
Okay.
Just for addition or consideration for the next version, they're only 3 and they're fairly minor. But in Chapter 2, which is employee recruitment and selection, there is a section, Section B3, that speaks to the fact that the Board of Selectmen are definitely involved in the hiring of a few positions: police chief, fire chief, DPW director, and finance director. I would like to propose that there should be some language in this employee recruitment that allows the Board of Selectmen some discretion in being involved in hiring of any other employees, because those situations do arise, and we are the
Agreed.
so that is the first one. I'll leave you to figure out what that language would look like. The second one was just a clarification. It's since I still get confused with these numbers. This looks like section 3.3. Eventually we'll have page numbers on these, right?
Yep.
But it is the section that talks about performance reviews, and it clearly calls out the fact that there will be regular performance evaluations, and that employees will be eligible for annual salary increases up to 2%. But it wasn't completely clear to me, it says based on the results of the annual evaluation process. It wasn't completely clear to me in this that was separate and distinct from any cost of living increase, that this was, we were adding purely a merit, a possibility for valued employees, high-functioning employees for whatever we want to call it, a merit increase. So that would just be something I would add to that paragraph. And I think there was one more, I tried to turn down the pages, one more small thing, which maybe now I'm not going to find. But if I don't, I will leave it at those two were the only, from a policy point of view, the only things. Thank you again. My thanks as well, Peter. I can only imagine the amount of work it took just to even get it into a format, let alone update it. And I do agree with John that we shouldn't wait another 18 years. So that's all I have on that. Thank you. And this will come up again for our vote at a subsequent meeting, so in case you guys think of anything. Okay, the next thing is our biannual OPEB actuarial analysis. That's a lot of alliteration. Audit committee report. That would be Jack.
Lucky me.
Lucky you. And yeah.
From employee handbook
I could
to
take
OPEB.
I tell you, it
or
gets,
an hour and a half to explain this, and the
won't
longer I
make a
talk, the
difference.
less you're going to know.
Yeah.
Believe it or not. So we're required, we in the town are required to basically have an audit and really review by outside consultants, namely actuaries, about what our so-called GASB 75 results are, which is basically our pension liabilities and our medical liabilities for retirees. And that this consulting group came and made a presentation to our audit committee, which I'm a member of, and so is Rich Jones and the chairman of our FinCom, Alex Bagan. And it was about, I don't know, an hour and 15 minutes. Peter was there, and that, who else was there? So it's a very, very complicated subject. The bottom line is that the state in almost every city in town is way underfunded for fundamentally 2 reasons. One, interest rates have been very, very low by the Federal Reserve for years now, which has caused the pension liabilities to rise much further than anticipated for complicated reasons. And that affects not only cities and towns, it affects for-profit and not-for-profit employers as well as the pension plans. And and many cities and towns are contributing nothing to this. So we decided, I guess it was 2 years ago, that we would, no, this is not right, but we don't have a lot of money. So we thought that based on the advisor's recommendations, that we would at least make an effort over a period of time to make a contribution that would escalate by $10,000 a year. So through 2017, it was $20,000. Is it this year's budget is $30,000?
For FY19?
Was it $40,000?
18 was 30.
18 was
30.
Yeah, so we put, so every year, we've, our plan, and we've done this for 4 years, I guess, with fiscal 19, is to increase it by $10,000 a year. Now, that may sound great, but that we're still way, way, way in the hole. But the good news is that for those of you who are going to be alive, by 2051, we'll have actually come up and fully funded our service costs. And that, I don't know if she's going to be chairman then, but unless you can.
I feel like I might not.
And believe it or not, that so that actually our results are better for other reasons. That our liability is less than it was 2 years ago, which is a 2-year measurement period. Our liability in June 30, 2015, I'm getting, this is going to go over everybody's head, but was $5,059,000 and change. Yeah, it's a lot of money. As of June 30th, 2017, which is last, it was $4,845,000. Not because we put in 20 or 30,000, but for other reasons too. And that, so every year we expect, so our liabilities decrease by 900,000 and other things affecting it by 350,000. I know I'm being, but we compare, believe it or not, favorably to most other cities and towns, certainly in the North Shore, where a lot of places are putting nothing, and indeed our regional school district is contributing zero, and has no, in the fiscal 19 budget is contained no money for this, and they have a substantial liability, but we can't influence that. That's up to them. And so that we're making an effort every year, and part of the reason doing that is we think that this is going to be persuasive to our the people who value our bonds, that give us, we have an extremely high rating. Is it still AAA? That's higher than the federal government. Isn't that amazing? Somebody must be smoking something back there to give us a AAA. But anyway, we have a AAA. We want to make sure that we really, I think if I was going to buy bonds,
we pay our bills, Jack.
I'd buy federal. If I was going to write my will and have instruct me people, I think I'd put the federal government a little higher than the town of Wenham, and that despite the august, resources we have in governing this town. And so we're going to have this every 2 years. It'll be going up 10,000 every year. Hopefully we can maintain that. Put a little strain on the budget, but at least we're showing people we're making progress towards this. And I think many other cities and towns, including the state is way in the hole. I think they're just hoping for some type of a state bailout, but the state doesn't have a lot of money either. So I guess that if the stock market continues to do well and interest rates rise, we'll have a lower increase in our liability than we otherwise would have had or experienced in the last 4 or 5 years. So the bottom line is that they've come in, we're doing a good job. The liability is less than it was before, for partly because of our contributions, but partly for other reasons that had nothing to do with us. And we'll have it again in 2 years, and who's ever sitting in this chair right now, 2 years now, could give you. So this report is available to the public. Is it?
Not on the website, but it certainly is available.
We can put it on the website. Anybody who has a more thorough understanding can join our audit committee the next time we do this.
If I might, Jack, I have a question and a comment. Yeah. I think the comment first, to make sure I'm correct.
I hope you understood what I said.
It is a complicated issue, and it's been hanging around way too long, and thank God that the town of Wenham is actually doing something about it. But there's another unfunded liability that is the same as this, only much bigger, and that is the school system.
I just said that.
Right. Is there Is there a way in which we could get an actuarial report on?
They have to have one, too. And they have to have it every 2 years. I don't know if they're in the same 2-year cycle we are, but nevertheless, yes, that should be a public document. Presumably, it should be presented to some Hamilton Wenham Regional School District Committee meeting, I would think. And if not, Peter can certainly make a request to the superintendent. Gee, the Board of Selectmen would like to see that report.
Yes.
And that, however, I think our actuaries somehow were privy to the results, at least of their non-funding of that, and so that, so it must be a public document someplace.
Because ultimately, the town of Wenham, me, taxpayer and the rest of you, all have a price to pay in there.
That's right.
It affects all of us.
That's right.
And if the school is not acting on this, or doesn't do their reporting properly.
There's nothing to do with the reporting. They've chosen, like Wenham chose until 3 or 4 years ago, not to contribute anything, hope it goes away. And that, most of the towns of North Shore have taken a similar attitude towards this.
That's right.
So I don't want to single out the Hamilton Regional School District as being aberrant. They're probably in the majority of people, and we're in the minority of people, by trying to make at least some effort to, at someday, again, it's 2051, it's a long way away, to have the assets exceed the liabilities. And that, but
Yep.
so Peter can, I'm sure, get a report, but the report's going to basically show the liability has probably stayed even from 2 years ago, based on some of the things I'm seeing here, but won't have any beneficial impact by any contributions.
Got it.
Is that a fair statement, Peter?
Yeah, and I know it came up as we went through the FY19 budget process, at least one of the joint meetings, in terms of the unfunded liability.
Liability for the school.
For the school district.
Because I believe it's.
My recollection is it's $25 million unfunded
Yeah,
liability.
25 million, and we're the underwriters. That's the
We in the
big
town of
concern.
Hamilton.
Right.
Correct, yeah, we're not sole.
Yeah, and it does not, one of the things that actually came up in the audit committee meeting was that there's no explicit language in the regional agreement relative to who would be liable to pay those costs if the district were to dissolve or change in any way.
That would be one mess, wouldn't it, huh? Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
But John, I think Peter can get the report for you, and that you would almost need the actuaries to walk you through it. So you could, this is not, you can, maybe the two other selectmen could have a copy of this report to
I
understand.
think all three received a
I
copy.
think this, we have a copy of it, I
Okay.
think, in our packet. So if I just have a question. Is it a true statement to say that maybe a very small part of the reason that our liability decreased was because our health insurance premiums did not increase as much
Yes.
as they were anticipated? So the work that was done with changing from the GIC to this other plan
So,
will help?
yeah, so.
Will
It will help. So,
will.
right, so
Yeah.
our premium increases were, for the previous 2 fiscal years, were lower than what they based their projections on, which helped. The next analysis in 2 years' time, the work that we did in opting out of the GIC, we'll see some more significant benefit in terms of reducing our liability, because that's really how you do, that is the way that you most easily, make a difference on your unfunded liability is on the reduction in premium as opposed to, on the contribution side.
Speaking of health, so we're an outlier compared to the other communities in terms of we're funding 75% of retiree medical costs. And the majority of towns are funding 50%. You can't fund less than 50% by state law, but nevertheless, that we're far more generous than,
Just to our employees, yeah.
to our retirees.
Retirees, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
yes.
well, employees, retirees, and that. So anyway, it's if you're going to change that, presumably would affect new hires, or it's something to consider
Yeah.
in the budgeting, which would have a favorable impact on these numbers.
Thank you, sir.
Anything else on that?
All set.
Thank you, Jack,
Yep.
Oh, you're
for your
very
work
welcome.
on the audit committee and for the report. And I think we're going to roll right on with you, Jack.
Next time we do this, maybe we can invite, say, Alex Bagan to come and, also give some commentary. He might have some, or whoever the chairman of the FinCom is, he might have some angles that he'd like to elucidate that I didn't bring up.
Sure.
Maybe he can do the whole report. And I can do
I see where you're going with this, Jack. Okay, so the next thing on our agenda is this is an update on electrical inspectional services, an issue that came up at our meeting a couple of meetings ago. So, Jack, you have that to introduce.
I do, and I'm going to turf it right over to Peter.
Yeah, we're very good at turfing.
So there's a memo in your packet
job.
tonight, which I'll just go through. And as Catherine mentioned, there was some questions, discussion, I think the board's last meeting, which we had a short continuation of a meeting
Right.
last week.
The last actual meeting.
But really, it was the last actual meeting. There were some questions that were raised, and so I, over the past few weeks, have followed up and collected as much information as I could. So I'll start by saying that after our current electrical inspector was appointed in late winter of 17, our assistant electrical inspector was had to respond to an incident after regional dispatch wasn't able to contact the electrical inspector. And at the time, I met with both employees and tried to clarify expectations in terms of the need for the electrical inspector to be available and responsive to those kind of emergency calls, whether they were after hours or during the day. So previously, the past practice was the electrical inspector would notify the assistant if they were going to be indisposed, unavailable, so that the assistant would be on call to provide adequate coverage. And the expectation after that conversation, June of last year, was that anything different was to be reported to the permitting coordinator, who works with all the inspectors on a daily basis, or myself. So since that time, the assistant inspector has responded to about 10 emergency calls. We went through town records, emails that were sent, and the like, as well as call logs from the regional dispatch center. And it was, quite honestly, a little bit of a mix in terms of how many those instances were a result of the electrical inspector not being available versus the assistant inspector responding for other reasons, including being contacted directly by the fire department. And since our last meeting, there have been, I think, at least 2 more of those kinds of incidents. So as far as we could tell from the records and based on my conversation with the chief, there hasn't been a situation where we haven't had an electrical inspector responding to these calls for emergencies. But generally, it has been more often than not the assistant inspector who has been responsive. So had a conversation with the chief after one of the recent instances just to remind the fire department that the assistant inspector's local and well-known, but really the fire department as well as regional dispatch needs to follow the standard protocol, which is there to contact the inspector first and the assistant second. And my understanding is that everybody's on the same page in terms of that. As I referenced in my earlier report, we are on the verge of starting our new shared inspection program with Hamilton and going through the hiring process for all of the inspector positions. This particular issue was very much taken into consideration as part of that hiring process. So the updated job description very clearly establishes that the electrical inspector is to be available to respond to these emergency calls 24/7. And we also, in our interview questions, asked each of the candidates or addressed the issue with each of the candidates so that they were very clear in terms of the expectations for the position. So We, in relatively short order, as I mentioned, should be making recommendations to both of the boards for the electrical inspector position and the other inspector positions. And that's something that will be forthcoming, but that's really, as I mentioned, the individuals who currently hold all the inspector positions are continuing in those roles in the interim over the next few weeks.
Before I forget, a quick question, clarification. So in the process that's supposed to be followed, regional dispatch would, they have their process and they know what their process is as of now in case there was any confusion there.
And there, as far as their written protocol and the call log, there doesn't seem to be any ambiguity there. There was, I think, one incident where they called the past electrical inspector, but that was an issue with the employee, not with their protocol.
Well, I'd like to make a...
with the protocol. That's
Right,
fine.
and they've been reminded of it, apparently.
Yeah.
Well, I've got some comments for the public predominantly, but others as well. The reason this hit such a high point with me personally and professionally is because when our fire department is on scene to a fire call, or whatever the situation is, and they expect someone to shut down that electrical service so that the manpower can do what they need to do, whether it's your house on fire or some other issue that I can't even dream of. And when that person doesn't show, someone could get fatally injured. And this is a life safety issue to me. And I don't think it's any different when it comes to gas. That's why I got so hopped up over this gas representative being here. Because these are life safety issues, and we're asking these people in our fire and police department to enter dwellings or circumstances or accident scenes, excuse me, and if there isn't a response, it's on us. So my feeling is that the policies, procedures, and protocols for the fire department, for the police department, for the rec center, the emergency call center, must all be in harmony, as you said. They must be reviewed on an annual basis, if not sooner. I think some of these people ought to be put in the same room on some regular schedule so that they can actually practice like the fire department or police department do for other things of serious nature. You know, if there's a shooting at a school, they practice these things. And then to get to the non-response, we are paying someone pretty heftily to respond to these, and that's not happening. And the communication is not happening. I want to see that that is addressed too, because there's a big disparity between the electrical inspector and the assistant. And also to commend the assistant for stepping up to the plate repeatedly, without hesitation, to every one of these calls, whether he's been called or not.
Completely agree. I did that just the other week.
So, Mr. Brown, thank you very much. And the police department, please, make sure you stay on this stuff, because it's your people.
Fire.
Fire.
Sorry.
He wants to
The
make
other
sure he
guys wear
doesn't get
blue,
the
they wear
different
white,
jobs.
that's
Well, he's sort of
He's
got
got
a
to
blue
do
jacket
his
sometimes.
jobs.
Yeah, he has a blue jacket sometimes.
You know,
as well.
it's your people that are on the
Great.
line here, and
Pull over.
we expect you to do a whole lot. We better be doing our part behind the scenes so that you can do your whole lot. All right. I'm not quite done with this subject at this point, but I'm done for tonight. I'd like to see a follow-through, and I'd like to see a little more beef to the policies and protocols, and then how they're going to be reviewed.
Okay.
That's right. So thank you. Thank you, Peter, for your work. Thank you, BJ, for your diligence and caring. He had one call right here in front of Town Hall last week.
Yes, sir.
Well, pole went down, ripped the service off of
He
a
and Peter
house,
took care of that together.
and he was there. Just happened to be right behind that car, but,
Worked out nicely.
yeah.
There is, well, okay.
Thank you.
Jack, did you have something?
I echo what John said, that in terms of, we owe a debt of gratitude to you, BJ, for stepping to the plate many, many times over the last many, many months. Johnny on the spot, and sometimes I understand you're out in your boat with your family, and that the electrical inspector didn't answer or whatever, and you shortchanged your weekend holiday on your boat, or somebody's boat, and responded in a timely fashion, and for that, and all the other times you did that, gratuitously, thank you.
I think it does highlight the benefit of having someone local. I mean, aside from the person, but having someone local who is here a lot in that role. And the only thing is, I hear you, John, and I don't disagree with you, but I just wanted to clarify for the 3 people that we were told might be listening to this. So yes, it is a life and death, can be a life and death situation, but I think I heard you say that we have not had an instance where there has not, in town, where there has not been an inspector at a fire that needs to be there. So no one should be worried. It might not be exactly the person that we think or should be or whatever, but there has been an electrical inspector at every instance.
There has been a response.
Right, there has. I just didn't want somebody to
Qualified
think there was a
response.
hole somewhere that they should be worried about.
No, but there was a hole, because if the assistant electrical inspector was in Florida on vacation, or in Maine on vacation, and the electrical inspector was somewhere off, we would have nobody. So that's,
The
there is a
potential
problem
is
here.
there, and I'm not saying that.
It was
What I'm just
serendipity that
saying
we
is
didn't have that happen.
It hasn't
We mustn't
happened.
leave these things to chance. Because we have a good-natured local person who responds, and this happens in other departments as well. I see what the Bill Tyaks and others do, and they're many times unsung heroes. And they're not looking to be recognized. They just want to know what their job is, and that the people around them are doing their job, because, like I said about the gas line, I mean, a 40-foot flame blasting out of the road, I wouldn't have been happy if it was one of my family members or one of the people in town.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Anything more
Enough said.
on that for now?
That's it.
All right.
Done.
Next, we have a review and approval of the updated school grounds maintenance agreement, which I have a feeling is also going to get turfed. It's John's
Yep.
item, letter G.
All right, as I understand, we continue the same service with the grounds maintenance at the school system, but without the assistant, or the contribution of Hamilton as being part of that. Is that
There's one.
You got it, yeah.
Pretty
So,
correct.
essentially, during mowing season, we'll call it, the Wenham DPW for the past number of years now has mowed and done general cleanup for the regional school district Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday morning out of the gate. We've continued to do that despite Hamilton dropping off. It's meant that we've shifted the schools that we handle. So now we mow the 3 elementary schools, and we do the back athletic field at the middle high school. And the school district has subbed out the other mowing and
so a
cleanup work.
subcontractor, not Hamilton?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Is doing the balance.
Yep.
And we get compensated
Yeah,
from the school?
Yeah, we receive compensation for our staff and equipment time, and it's on the order of about $15,000 to $18,000 a year, depending on the weather and regularity with which we mow. But that generally, and that goes into a revolving account. It's reauthorized again by town meeting this year, up to $20,000, and that's used for maintenance equipment and the like mowers and that kind of thing.
So Peter, I just want to make sure, we're not financially disadvantaged because Hamilton's chosen not to participate, is that correct?
We aren't financially or operationally challenged. We're receiving about the same amount, and we're committing the same resources. We're not expending ourselves anymore to kind of bridge the gap between what Hamilton used to do. We're doing the same amount. We're spending the same amount of time. We're just providing the service to some different schools that we had in the past.
So who's making up for Hamilton's contribution?
The school has had to sub out
Okay,
that
I
work
thought I heard you say that,
to
but I
a
wasn't-
private contractor, and it's an incremental cost to the schools of $15,000 a year to sub it out. And based on my conversations with Jeff Sands, they actually had to reduce the scope of work for what that contractor was doing for that extra $15,000 above and beyond what Hamilton was doing before. So we're clearly providing a benefit to the schools, providing a service that at a much cheaper rate than they would see on the open market.
Okay. So unless you have other questions, I can read the motion.
Please, John, read the motion.
I move to approve the proposed agreement between the town of Wenham and Hamilton, Hamilton Wenham Regional School District for grounds maintenance and general cleanup, contingent upon approval of the agreement by the Hamilton Wenham Regional School Committee.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Further, I just have one note here. I was reviewing past information, and I know that and this is, I think, a question, I know that the superintendent has signed these agreements in the past, and that's perfectly within his right to do, as long as the school committee has voted to approve the agreement and authorize the superintendent to sign that. So that's why that contingent language is in there, and I guess, Peter, I just ask that you follow up on that to be sure that the school committee has had that on an agenda and has approved it and authorized the superintendent to sign. I have no further discussion. Ready to vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So that's unanimous. Grievance procedure, and that's John as well.
Yeah, it is. I
Boilerplate.
can't pretend to say I'm a lawyer and know all about what this is supposed to be doing, but it's a procedure for anyone who's disabled to follow if they feel things haven't been handled properly. And I guess it follows the ADA guidelines.
Yeah, so this is something that was brought to our attention as we went through the open space and recreation plan update process. One of the statutorily required elements is ADA self-evaluation report. And the consultant had reached out to us and asked for a number of different things, having a grievance procedure in place being one of them. And so that's essentially what is before you now, to ensure that we're compliant with the ADA and also can satisfy all the requirements of the open space and recreation plan.
So your hiring policies, your access, physical handicap access, and so forth.
I get all good with it.
Is what this all comes out to.
OPEB.
Yep.
All right.
Really interesting ones.
I will read the motion. I move to approve the proposed grievance procedure to meet the requirements of the Americans with Disability Act of 1990.
Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That is unanimous as well. So I have no other matters that have not been reasonably anticipated. So we can skip that. And the last item that we have is under old business, and it has to do with an update on the Essex County Regional Emergency Communication Center and potential approval of a finalized scope of work for regional dispatch feasibility study, and that is with Jack.
So,
Titles.
summary background. People have been reading about the Regional Emergency Communication Center for quite a while. There have been a lot of management changes there. There has been an audit that Peter summarized, not the last meeting, maybe the meeting before that, where they had a lot of issues that were in the process of being corrected. One of the 5 towns is north of us. Amesbury, right. It's dropping out next July 1, which will automatically change our agreement or our obligations to stay in there. Otherwise, we'd have had a 2-year a notification that we went out, and we don't have that after that. So there are pros and cons about staying in. One of what they've, I'm going to turn this over to Peter in a minute, but I think that the new management wants us to stay in. They want to provide a first-class service, and the benefit to the town if they do that would be that our annual assessment and the cherry sheet of $82,000 goes away. So our cost of the town of Wenham to participate in this is zero, starting next July 1. And that since we're concerned about our tax rate, although we don't want to jeopardize our extremely important emergency services because of some money, but nevertheless, that has to be considered. However, as we've talked about in the past, we think we need a plan B. At least I do, and I think my colleagues agree, that what if we're not satisfied with whatever the new protocols, procedures, policies in response, excuse me, next year is. So what do we do? And that we can't wait around and just say, oh, well, now what? So we've been talking about, and we have a proposal in here, and I think Peter happened to mention this at the last meeting, the meeting before, from an outside consulting firm, MRI, that would look at basically other local options, which would be primarily re-establishing a joint emergency center with the town of Hamilton, and they are very enthusiastic about wanting us to do just that, I'm told. Or the town of Danvers has a very modern emergency center, and they would love us to join them. And so the question is, what are the advantages and disadvantages, as known, for us to basically either join Hamilton or Danvers, and what would be the cost implications, and what would be the service differences, and that. So what are the nuances of that, and that. Obviously, our police and fire, they've already gone to Danvers, right? And that they're familiar with that, and you've missed me familiar with Hamilton. Any resurrection of the Hamilton one would be some kind of a civilian board where it's not going to be Hamilton's emergency center where we're contributing. It has to be a joint emergency center. I think everyone understands that. And so that I think we need an evaluation by an outside firm to evaluate the capacity of Danvers and the capacity of Hamilton and the costs associated with that, and what would be the likely responses, and is one better than the other, and how would that compare to what is being promised right now by the emergency center in terms of level of service beginning next year. So that's my summary of that, and I'm going to turn it over to Peter to hopefully not contradict me, but nevertheless.
Outstanding summary. I'll just add a couple more details. So just to go back to our June 19th meeting, there was some initial discussion by the board at the time regarding the scope of work that had been developed for MRI to undertake the feasibility study. There was some feedback from the board relative to making sure that we added a separate standalone element in the scope of work that touched on shared frequencies. I know that's something that will is in the mix now at the Regional Dispatch Center, and will certainly be front and center when and if State 911 takes over. So since that June 19th meeting, I did reach out to officials from both Hamilton and Danvers and got their feedback on the scope of work to ensure that everybody was on the same page, that we weren't missing anything, and have heard back from both communities. And there really haven't been any substantive changes to the scope of work for the study, other than that analysis of the shared frequencies. And also heard again from both entities that they are very interested in engaging with us on the project. As Jack mentioned, on June 26th, the REC Financial Advisory Board met with officials from State 911 and EOPS, where they gave an initial presentation relative to their plans to take over operations effective next July, and to fully subsidize those operations so that we wouldn't have any cherry sheet contributions going forward. There was a fair amount of conversation at the time from the various managers, administrators around the table, looking for some more details in terms of what that would look like independent of the financial contribution going away. And that conversation was taken up again at a joint rec board meeting last Wednesday morning on the 11th, where all the chiefs were present as well, along with those state officials from State 911 and EOPS again. And I think the questions continue to revolve around what operational changes, if any, are going to be made as part of that transition, and what the governance structure is going to look like. We are equal partners in the venture currently, as initially designed, and I think it's important that we continue to have a seat at the table and a say in how the rec is managed and what their operations look like. And I think there was pretty near universal consensus that everybody wanted to have some more thorough assurances from the state that they're saying that that's going to be the case. They've issued a press release, but we have asked for, and they have promised, formal correspondence outlining, at least in broad strokes, what they're proposing, what their offer is to take over the center next July. And they understand what they're looking for in response to that is some level of commitment from the municipalities that they're supportive of that before they engage in it. They want to see it be successful. They've obviously spent a lot of millions of dollars over the years, and they have a lot of sunk costs in the program at this point. They want to make sure it's successful, and so that's really their focus. And so we can expect that correspondence from the state officials. They told us sometime in the next month or so. I'd expect it in August. In the meantime, I'd agree with Jack. There are a lot of question marks. Obviously, we've checked the box off in terms of financial sustainability, seemingly, if State 911 takes it over. But there are other considerations, particularly around shared frequencies and what that's going to look like, and what the staffing model is going to look like. If they're subsidizing another $750,000 of the operation, you would think that they're going to try to reduce that subsidy as much as possible, and the easiest way to do that would be to bring the personnel costs down. So until we really know what that's going to look like, and I think that's going to take the next several months and then some, I feel like the town would be in the best position to understand what Plan B is with either Hamilton or Danvers.
So with permission, I'm going to read the draft motion, and then we can have more discussion or whatever. But I move to approve the proposed professional services agreement between the town of Wenham and Municipal Resources, Inc., that's MRI, for completion of a regional dispatch feasibility study for a fee not to exceed $9,800, subject to the approval of a reserve fund transfer request by the Finance and Advisory Committee.
Is there a second?
Second.
Anybody else? Discussion? Any further discussion? Okay,
Cliff Note version,
that'd be good.
because I could spend quite a bit of time this evening on
Well,
this.
let me take my watch off.
I'm more than passionate about this because, again, it's a life safety issue. But everybody knows, I'm sure by now, that I've been probably the strongest advocate for the regional emergency call center. It was the right thing, set up for the right reasons, with the right mission statement in there. What is bothering me are a couple of things, a couple of points, and one is I get a lot less comfortable with the state coming in and taking over. Don't know what that means. Describe it to me. That may even be fine, but as Peter said, without Wenham having a seat at the table that is equivalent to any other municipality that may come in, we'll get crushed. The fixes are now known because MRI, who I was the guy that brought him into our town hall, has done a study of that place. They've also done a study of Hamilton and a study of Danvers. the bottom line point to me right now is to charge us $10,000 to tell us what they already know and have already been paid for by state and by towns, I think is outrageous. Done.
Well, they know what, they did a voluminous report on MRI. I'm not going to contradict you, but we don't know, let's say we don't need Plan B. Then, and it turns out, voila, we're going to save $82,000. The fire and the police departments are very happy with the service and everything else like that. Great. We just continue on. However, if we're not, and the things in this description that's going to be forthcoming several months from now, I don't think we can wait until, what's this, July, next February or April to find out, oh, great, we're disappointed, this is not what was advertised, they're not coming through, and then we try to figure out what to do in that point, which will be several months later. So I think we need to understand, if we had to choose something other than the rec, what's a better fit for Wenham? Is it joining Danvers or joining Hamilton? Money and responses and frequencies and all that stuff. What is our Plan B? We do not have a Plan B right now, and I think we need a Plan B. And then I'm not saying that the Plan B would be superior. B is less than A. It's not. If the state can come through and deliver what Peter has been promised and which he just summarized a few minutes ago, and for zero money, I think that's our Plan A. And so that, but we're worried about. It's the state, and so that I think we need this plan. In emergency services, fire and police, we spend a lot of money on fire and police, and that I was going to say something else.
And you didn't.
And
Good
that.
I said, good job for not.
Yeah. And so that this is a small amount of money for the citizens of Wenham to ensure that we have a state-of-the-art emergency response, and if we need to go to a Plan B. And so,
I hope you realize I was saying I was supportive of your Plan B.
I didn't get that. That's why I just made the point.
Okay. What I'm disappointed in is MRI, who we have employed quite heavily in this town, successfully, I believe, you for one, to be charging us $10,000. I mean, I understand. I'm in business too. You got to make money.
So I think I
Say the
can
same
at
thing I
least
was gonna
try
say.
to address that. So the feasibility study that was done for Hamilton was done in 2014. It looked at the feasibility of Hamilton, Ipswich, and Manchester joining together.
Mm-hmm.
The study that was done, and I think it was on the order of $23,000 start to finish for that study. Scope of work for Danvers, which was completed last year, looked at Danvers, Hamilton, and Manchester joining. And that was, I think, right around $20,000. If you look at the scope of work that we have drafted with them, it piggybacks on the data collection work and some of the analysis that's been done. But I think what you do have to keep in mind is we haven't been party to any of those prior studies. Mm-hmm. And on the technical side, and Jeff and Stephen can speak to some of those far better than I, there is a lot that would go into that transition. And that's not something that we necessarily have the time, capacity, or expertise to fully analyze, to look at both of those two options. And so, and in the scheme of cost, the cost for this study is about half of those two other studies, and that was based on conversations I had with them, recognizing the work that they had already done to assemble a lot of this information to date.
So if they had not done those studies, or if we could not use any of the data from the other studies, and this were a more comprehensive study, it would be more like a $20,000 study. But because we have some data for Danvers and for Hamilton from past studies, it's actually less.
And
I guess that's the other way
it
I'm
would also
looking
be
at it.
less if we were looking at just a Plan B, one other option as opposed to two options.
Right.
That also adds cost to the scope.
Yeah. What's the drop dead or timeline for making a decision, do you believe?
There's no deadline. I will say that, you know, the state has given us that initial informal notice. I believe that it's important that we start sooner rather than later to work on, quite frankly, the IMA, because a lot of the questions will be answered as we go through that process. The intermunicipal agreement that was originally drafted had sheriff as a central party to that.
Our original mission.
Correct. The intermunicipal agreement that governs the rec.
The rec itself.
Now,
Now you're getting to me. Okay, that's okay. That's a good thing.
it goes away really for two reasons next July 1. And the first is the terms and conditions state that once you have less than 5 member municipal communities, then the IMA dissolves and Amesbury will be dropping out. So as Jack mentioned, we don't have to give the 2-year notice that we would have if we were leaving otherwise. And the sheriff is essentially looking to step out of any real role other than being the property owner and leasing the property and everything else. And State 911 is taking on that management component.
Yeah,
So
see, I believe that IMA document, original founding document, is the critical key to that whole operation. And I believe in long-term, hopefully, a model for other regional agreements that might or should probably be coming down the line.
actually, if you look at the audit that that MRI did for the rec, one of their key findings is the fact that there's a lot of ambiguities and omissions in the IMA relative to, it was drafted long
time ago, before they
Correct.
knew the warts and bubbles.
And so their recommendation was that the IMA needs to be updated and revised regardless of State 911 getting involved or not.
So if we have this from MRI information, we now have talking points to go at the state and say, by the way, here's what we believe this should look like.
And they're
Is that
inclined,
fair?
they want to see it be successful. That's clearly their focus. That being said, that's going to be an ongoing process that's going to take many months. And we are one of any number of stakeholders that are at the table and don't necessarily have any particular authority. And so just this feasibility study is going to take, it to me, would run parallel to that process, so that as we get further along, we can say, okay, this is what we know about our options, this is what we know about what's
another tool in our
looks like.
box.
Yep.
It's a critical tool. Okay, you got me, I'm done.
And they are well aware that we're working on Plan B, which is hopefully going to push them
That's
in the right
fine. To
direction.
me, that's,
Yep, I've made it abundantly
been
clear
quoted
in all the
in the minutes
board
on that.
meetings. Yes, it
Is it
was.
quoted in the minutes?
Yes.
my
Okay.
deepest concern is that we're such a small entity. And this is what concerned me right from the very beginning when Kenny Walsh introduced me to the project. Once I got mentally around it, I understood this makes some sense. And the IMA is what convinced me or sold me on it, that it was the right way to go. Does it need an update? Absolutely. Thank you. I'm really pleased that you made that point. So that alone would give us the tool that we need to go whack the state in the head and say, hey, you want us to come with you, you want us to stay, we want to be here. We need a certain amount of assurances that you can't be messing around with our authority.
Absent that, they take over, and whatever they do, we really don't
Yeah.
have any say
Charge us
in
$1
that.
million, charge us whatever.
Okay, we done
Thank
with discussion on that? Ready? I think we had a motion and a second and discussion.
Right.
If there's no further discussion, I will call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So that's unanimous as well. And you'll communicate that to MRI,
Yep.
I assume?
Well, I've got to schedule a finance committee meeting first
Oh,
to
yes.
approve the
We do have
reserve
to
fund
pay for
transfer.
it, yeah. So that's a funny thing about those things. We have to pay for them. Okay, that concludes our business on the agenda. So I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Adjourned 8:20 PM.
Nice.
So parenthetically, this is
Don't
adjourned.
forget the ice cream
I
social.
have reviewed the minutes of the last 2 meetings,
Okay,
and I've communicated to our secretary, through Nikki, that they're fine as typed.
okay.
Whatever. So that's the
Hey,
meeting we
Jackie.
had on the